Welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. This is probably the fourth or fifth intro we've done with me laughing and everybody laughing the entire time. Today I'm joined by Zarir, Neha, and Shweta, and me. That's how I'm joined by them. And we're essentially going to talk about our trip training in Bacolod with Grand Tuhon. Now, there's a bunch of stuff I want to cover. I think I'm going to start off with talking about two things. Number one, our expectations for going there, and number two, our reasons for going there in whichever order. For me, at least, I was really excited for you guys to meet him. I was really excited for you guys to train with him. I was really excited to see him. It's been 3 years since I've seen him myself, and every single time I go back to Bacolod, I am I'm privy, or I'm able to glance or see a new aspect of Pekiti, a new perspective of Pekiti that I have not seen neither in my own training and neither in other people's training or teaching. You may have seen glimpses of it, but a lot of things just sort of crystallize when you, or make a lot more sense when you go to the Philippines with GT. Suddenly you have a lot of aha moments when you're training with him. At least that's my experience. And I told Zarir this when I was there. If I can take back even one thing that I'm going to add to my daily training schedule, then it's worth it. And generally, I come back with a lot more stuff. The way I structure my training trips normally is through my own solo practice in the Philippines. I revise what GT has given us or given me, and so that by the time I come back to India, I already know what I'm going to practice when I come back to India. So those are my reasons. The other interesting part about you three is that you three are very different experience levels, and so you're going to have very different reasons and expectations and outputs from this trip. I think let's start with Zarir, because Zarir is the newest to to this art. He's been training for only a few months, but when I asked around if people wanted to accompany me, he was one of the first to be like, me, I. So yeah, now your turn.
Yeah. Well, it was an amazing trip. I actually, until we actually figured out all the logistics and everything, I wasn't sure whether it was actually going to happen or not. Having gone there and come back, and it's been some time now, I just look back really fondly because, like Aditya said, I started just a few months ago, and I was probably like still I'm beginner level and hadn't learned as much before this, and then all of a sudden you're just thrown in with a grandmaster, like a legendary teacher like GT, and you kind of just have to go with the flow, which is something I was struggling with in any case. So just a few just a few minutes, just a few hours with him every day really kind of has been immensely uh, valuable for my development, for my early development in this art form.
But why did you like? I'm curious. Like, what were your expectations going in there? Like, what were your reasons for going there?
Uh, Honestly, like it's a how many people can say, regardless of what their experience level is, how many people can say that they got the chance to train with a grandmaster, with a Grand Tuhon like GT? So, I mean, I was telling one of you during the trip that um, regardless of what field you're in or what your discipline is, whether it's martial arts or professionally or whatever it is, like how often do you get to be with the person who literally, is like basically GT personifies Kali, and so to be able to like to have the opportunity to go and train with him, even just spend time with him, that was probably the biggest motivation.
I mean, I think the reason why I started with you is because I got a comment on one of the YouTube videos where somebody was like, "At what level? No, what level of skill are your students at that they have come? Because this can't be a trip that you would just be open or keep open for anybody." And I think that really exemplifies sort of the approaches that a lot of people take to training with some of these people, some of these like grandmasters, some of these old time masters, is that it's a very intimidating thing to embark on a journey like this, and most people would not do it with as little training as you have. But it was extremely cool that you had the, I don't know whether maybe you approached it differently, or it was a courage thing. I'm not exactly sure, but having you there was very cool for me, because while GT taught you, a lot of things got clearer for me. um, and I think that uh, he also really appreciated the fact that you were there in spite of not having that much experience in the art. So I am really really glad that you're there, and you are also another example of how, if i- if you are willing to go through the process, then you can go and train with GT regardless of whatever skill level you're at. So I think that that's a really cool thing.
I'm not going to
Shweta,
lie though, it was extremely intimidating.
yeah,
So that definitely was there, but like I do appreciate that. Obviously, all of you, like you said earlier, all of you are at different levels, but everyone. So I'm learning from my teacher, that is you. I'm learning from your teacher, that's GT, and also from the group, and we get to like partner. So I mean, all of that together was helped out a lot. But it obviously is extremely intimidating to be in the same room as GT.
Shweta, what about you? Like, you've been training with me for a while now as well. Um, I know you come from a slightly different place of, well, similar but slightly different also. You've also always been very fascinated by swords and blades. But what made you decide that this was a good time, or that you would want to go and train in the Philippines with GT?
To be honest, I was waiting for an opportunity for
Oh,
a really long time for someone to say, "Hey, let's go train with GT." But it just never came up. We've been training together for what, 5-ish years now, on and off, and most of it has been online. And the only times that I actually get to train with people is when I come to the school to train with you, and pick something up and then come back and work on it on my own, and our online sessions whenever that happens. uh, I was hoping to do this for a really long time, but because we've never spoken about it, and this was like the
also we
first
were in the middle of a pandemic.
that,
That was
yeah.
the reason. I haven't gone myself in like 2 3
Yes.
years.
Yes, and this looked like a fine time to do it. And I've known you guys a while also, and we were comfortable with each other. I understand how you teach, so I knew that even if I don't understand what GT is going to teach me, there's always going to be time for us to discuss and iron those things out. So, um, yeah, I was looking forward to it even before we actually planned for it. And the moment it showed up, I wanted to hop on.
I think Neha is the most Kali obsessed of us here, including me. Um, she she is she's been bitten bad by the Kali bug,
Yes.
and she has now this cool martial maiden page. But why did you want to go train with GT? Or why did you want to go to the Philippines to train with GT?
I mean, why? It just seems like such an, like, why wouldn't I? Do you know what I mean? It just was
I
such.
mean, the reason why I'm saying this is because, again, the sort of way that you guys, this why wouldn't I sort of attitude is extremely refreshing, because it's not actually very common in the Filipino martial arts world. You generally have, the way that it is, at least it can be extremely political, it can be extremely intimidating, it can be extremely hierarchical. So for people to just be like, yeah, well, why wouldn't I want to go to the Philippines? Because just think about what we did, right? We went, it took us over 48 hours coming back, 24 hours going there, to a city you've never heard of, to a country that most people think is extremely dangerous, even though, again, having been there many times, nothing's ever happened to me. or around me, to go train with a person you've never seen, an 84-year-old person you've never seen. You don't know. I mean, the place that we're staying is unfamiliar. The training method is unfamiliar. The city is unfamiliar. The country is unfamiliar. The language is unfamiliar. The training partners could be unfamiliar. Everything. And also you're going there. It's a different thing if you're going to. If I ran a camp, let's say, right? But you're going to this legendary teacher, and most people are intimidated by, am I good enough? That's the big question. Am I good enough? But you guys were like, screw it. we'll figure it out, which is really great. Like, I know this sounds like a criticism, but genuinely it is something that I really, really, really admire, and I like, and I am quite it's quite refreshing. I'm done with my rant now.
Okay. So I'm glad the ranting is continuing. So I will couch it this way. Absolutely, and let me say that if somebody else had come to me, or if there was a chance to go train with GT without you, I don't know that I would have been as sort of like, yeah, of course, about it, like as sort of like obviously, a lot of you have to understand that my Kali experience has come filtered through your Kali experience, right? So a lot of like what I know of Kali has also come because you're my teacher, right? And I've heard you say things so many times, like it's so important to be immersed in that culture. It's not just about training Kali in a vacuum. Like, you do need to have that cultural experience, to be exposed to it. Also, this whole idea of you being there, and we've all talked about this. I mean, I think especially me and Z, I think had a long discussion about you being there as a buffer. So while it wasn't about you having to protect us or shield us in any way, but it was almost like this interpretive value where maybe we wouldn't have been able to get the amount out of the trip if we weren't going through you. So I mean, one of my answers to this is I was super excited to go because I was going with you and with this group of people, and obviously when I say obviously, I mean, to train with GT is just, it's a dream, right? Like, I mean, the fact that any of us got to do this. But I think I've heard so much about even you saying that, like, unless I've heard you say this many times that I will only promote somebody to Agalon if they've been to the Philippines. So guess what?
Yeah.
Guess what? I'm on track right now. Just so
No pressure.
Just to clarify for people who are watching, essentially having trained with GT for so many years, I know the way he teaches, I know the way he likes to teach, the way what he likes people to do, and oftentimes it can be very daunting for people who are not familiar with that process to learn from him, because he'll show you one thing in 20 different ways, and you're just like, which one am I supposed to do? So a lot of times what I would do for these guys is I would break down everything, the 20 different ways he's shown us, into like digestible chunks, and we would either in the session itself go over it, or we would do some extra sessions post training when GT go home, where I would break things down and be like, okay, this is what we did, this is what we did, this is how you train it at home, this is how this fits with that, and I just put everything into context, because again, I've seen people struggle, and essentially for me the big thing with you guys was, you're making this massive step, because it is a big thing, and there are very few people. I remember telling you all this, that how many people get to spend 10 days in the Philippines training with GT? There are very few, very few. And if you want to know Pekiti, if you want to understand Pekiti while he's still around, this is, all of us are just reflections of him, different reflections of him. He is the source, and so we want to, while we can, spend as much time with the source as possible. But you're spending all this money, you're spending all this time, you're making this huge commitment. I want you guys to come back with material that you can spend, that you can practice. I don't want you guys to have just gone there, had an amazing experience, and then come back, and then when you have to train it, you got nothing, right? Because then that's a great experience, but what have you taken away from that? I'm not so sure. So that was one reason why I spent a lot of time doing that. And also it was interesting for me because spending time breaking GT stuff down in a way for all three of you to understand at different levels helped me understand the material a lot better. So that was cool. What was your first I don't know if impressions is the right word. How is the first time you met GT? Because for me, the first time I met GT was extremely bizarre. I ended up in Bacolod at an odd time. I was driven out into the middle of nowhere by people I don't know. I didn't meet GT at that time. I had never met him either. And we would drive into the middle of some fields, and I'm pretty sure I'm about to be murdered. And then out of the fields walked the group of men, and there was one woman, Tina, at that time. And I'm like, oh, which one is going? There's some big men over there, and behind them one sweet Filipino man is just ambling his way out. And I mean, the first time I spoke to him, it was in a really interesting conversation about what makes Pekiti Pekiti. It was about geometry. It was, and some of my, even now when I'm talking to you guys or teaching you guys, a lot of my answers will come from that first conversation, which I won't rant about right now, because this is about you guys more than it is about me. So whoever wants to go first, what is your first impression of GT?
I mean, go ahead, Shwets, go.
I think we were all at the breakfast table, and your instructions were be prepared for it.
Yeah, oh my goodness, I'm getting a tattoo.
So, and that was a bit scary, because be prepared for anything, okay? That makes things worse, right? So we were just waiting there, and this very well dressed and carefully put together old man starts walking towards us, and even if no one told us, or we have seen pictures, but he looks very different now because of his age and everything. He looked very different from the latest pictures that we'd seen of him. But we didn't need someone to tell us that, hey, this man is GT, because it was just obvious. He just walked in like he owned the bloody place, and we just stood up and you greeted him. So it was a bit unreal for me. I was like, okay, this is the legendary Grandmaster, Kali Grandmaster. It was pretty cool. A little bit scary, but awesome.
Yeah. When I first met GT, I didn't know who he was actually. I mean, I knew who he was, but I didn't know how big a deal he was. And I told him this actually, it was sometime within the first month of my staying in Bacolod, when I was like, okay, let me just Google this man and see who he is. And then I was like, holy shit, what have I walked into? But yeah, you guys already knew who he was before you got there. So yeah.
This huge juxtaposition between sort of knowing like what an absolute legend he is, and then having him sit at the table and he loves his jokes and he bursts into song, and he's, you know, just there's just such a sweetness and such a, you know, I mean, some of the jokes were, you know, just ranging from, you know, all kinds of jokes, right? So for me, it was just that. It was this idea of like, you know, somebody who is so absolutely, he epitomizes this art that we all love, and he's kind of the soul of it, right? The spirit of it. He's achieved so much in his own lifetime, but then he's here and he's chilling with us, and he's not in any way making us feel like we need to kowtow or we need to be intimidated, which I thought was beautiful. I think for me that was amazing. Just the ease. I felt very comfortable. I think we all felt really comfortable around him, right? Yeah.
A few seconds later, yes, when he sat down and said something extremely funny, and I was looking at Adi, is it okay to laugh now?
You weren't sure. There was what was protocol. Do you know what I mean? Like, what are you supposed to? But yeah, I don't know. I thought I was really happy around him. I really was.
Yeah, I didn't feel like, you know, that although like I said before, it's very intimidating in general to be around someone like him with his skill level and all of that. Like when the first time we met him, like Shweta was saying, it was breakfast. It wasn't in a training kind of environment, and he I think Aditya, you told us a lot about, you tried to like prepare us in many ways, set a lot of expectations, and also the mantra of be prepared for anything, which we heard every day, multiple times a day. as far as GT was concerned, GT's kind of approach to us, there wasn't any of this like you have come to train with me, you have to do X or Y or listen to every word I say. It was not hierarchical. It wasn't like, in fact, the thing I love the most, which Aditya, you have said to us, has said to me at least many times, even back home at LightHaven when I'm training. But it was really nice to hear GT say it to me multiple times, which is, you have to make it your own. Like, you come here, you're going to learn. There are kind of right ways and wrong ways to do things. But once you've got that foundation, once you got that base, like, you have to make it your own. Like, you cannot move like me, and you cannot move like that other person. You can only move like you. And these kinds of things, like, these are absolute gems, like, to hear from a man like him. And like Neha was saying, there's the sweetness. It's not about like just being nice and cuddly. I mean, like, the way he uh, looked after us as a student. Like, sometimes with me being at the most kind of beginner stage, like, actually trying to explain certain things, or being a little bit more patient with me, I think, than some of the others, which was really nice, heartwarming for me actually to experience.
Yeah. Um, I have forgotten what my next question was supposed to be. Shweta, what was the next question supposed to be? Oh yeah, what is training with him like? Yeah,
Yeah.
what was your initial, I don't know if initial, okay, let's start like this. Let's go like, what is your initial experience training with him like, and how did it um, evolve as we went along? Because for me, my first day of training with GT, he put a sword in my hand and he said, go, and he taught me pasada. And again, I keep saying this, when I showed up in the Philippines, I had a lot of martial arts. Sorry, I had a lot of martial arts experience under me already. I had a good chunk of some kenjutsu experience. I had dabbled in a little bit of Chinese weapons, but only 3 days of Pekiti I had done when Tuhon Shifu Kanishk first brought it to India, and it was like 7 years before I actually first went to the Philippines. So I didn't know what I was getting into, and I didn't have no footwork. I didn't have my angles. I didn't know anything, and he put a sword in my hand and he taught me this set called the Pasada. I had no idea what I was doing. Um, and it took me, I remember my first day with GT when it was just him and me, nobody else. And I think it was towards the end of my third month there, and or my end of my second month, one of them. And he taught me Spada Daga for the first time. And I remember just sitting, I remember having these aha moments going off all the time. But it took me a while actually. It took me a couple of months of training with him to get to those aha moments, because in the beginning, everything was confusing. I didn't understand anything. I had no idea what he was talking about half the time. I had no idea what I was just trying to copy and mimic those around me. And after training, there would be people who would, I would spend time with other people over there. Most of them are Tuhons now. There was Tuhon Pita, Tuhon Belton, there's Tuhon Jim, there was Trevor, there was Tina and Felix. And I spent time with these guys, and they really are the ones who took me through my beginning paces. But in the beginning, I don't know if what I got. It took me 2 months of training with GT, and back to back, or 3 months of training with GT when I stayed there for that chunk of time, for me to get those sort of aha moments where everything started clicking. And post that, the aha moments would come. But every time, the cool thing about training with GT is that you might see the same amount of the same similar esque material, but every time you go there, you get new insights into it. That was my first experience. I know, like for Zarir, there used to be a lot of times when we talk at the end of the day, where it would be, he would or Zarir, you would feel like everything is new. We did everything new today, and then we would be like, no, actually, it was similar. It was what we did yesterday. This is how connected. This is whatever. These are how all of the things are connected. But I'm like, did it get easier as you went along? Like, what is, when you first began, what happened, and then did it get easier, make more sense without an interpreter around as you went along?
I don't know if it got easier, but they definitely, like, the first few days definitely felt like I had no idea what I was doing initially. And I wasn't, like you said, I wasn't seeing any of the connections uh, between between certain drills, and also when you swap, um, sticks for knives, and you leave the knives for empty hand. Like, I wasn't seeing some of that stuff, and then obviously, when we're revising later, when we're practicing, even having a conversation about it later, I'm like, okay, the penny drops with slowly. It dropped very slowly for me. It took a couple of days. I started seeing that much more clearly. uh, but I don't think it got, in terms of actually, the new stuff that was happening for me, because everything was new. I don't think that got easier as the 10 days got on, but seeing the connections, at least, after the fact, like, theoretically, it started to make much more sense to me, which
Yeah.
was nice.
One of the things that I was trying to do with you guys before we left was, this is the stuff that I know GT likes to train. We're going to go over.
Yeah.
Did that, like, Neha, did that help you?
Oh, for sure. I think you were pretty clear with each. And what was really nice is, I mean, we keep talking about this, us being at different levels, or at least us having trained for maybe shorter or longer periods of time. And I feel like you prepared us at each level. So for me, definitely, I mean, you had taken me through a bunch of different drills, a lot of the gunting stuff that you had said, a lot of the, so when I was seeing it, um, it felt familiar enough where I didn't feel lost. I mean, I think that was I think it really helped me a lot. And in terms of training with GT, for me, more than anything, it was almost this process of osmosis. Like, it was just almost just being around him and just seeing how he moved, just seeing how what Z was talking about before, this idea of him talking about expression, right? Like, this is all about your own expression of it. But it just seems like he's got such a pure, obviously, but such like a pure sort of such clean way of like thinking about every little thing that he's doing. And I mean, for me, that was also incredible to watch. I got nervous a couple of times. I think you saw, like, when he would come to me and he would just suddenly, he'd say, "We're doing
In
this."
the beginning, yeah. In the beginning, the first day, you were just like, your brain was.
What is happening? And you had given us very clear instructions, which I mean, super fair instructions, which was like, don't look at me. I mean, I think it's on video a couple of times where something would happen. I would look over at you like,
Don't
no,
look at me.
do not look at me, and but then I think that eased off from me. I mean, I'm going to bring this up, and I will bring this up for the next 80 years of my life, is when he did Kabayan with me. Just that touching hands, just that it must have been a 60-second thing less, but I think I'm going to remember that for the rest. Just how gentle he was with me, but just how beautiful, and just that energy, and just, man, and Z, that day when he was doing that elbow thing with you, do you remember, whatever it was, the thing? Just
Yeah.
watching you go through that with him, for me, was really. Do you remember do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, of course, I'll never forget that either. But that's what I'm saying, right? He like, I'm coming into that with like no experience, and he's obviously going at his speed, and then realizing, no, this guy's not getting it. So he's slowing it down for me. He's correcting my, wrist locks and things as I'm trying to do it. So yeah, just amazing. I think, Aditya, what you were saying earlier about preparing us, like, and I want to like retract to something I said earlier, which was, if I had seen it before, because you said that, GT likes to do this or that kind of stuff, especially like the knife drills and things that we had done at back at LightHaven. And in fact, I had done something with Neha just a few days before we left for the Philippines. That kind of stuff, like, it felt really good that I was able to do it with some level of not expertise, but some level, decent level, because I'd actually done it before. I'd actually practiced before. Everything else, though, was kind of, I have to figure this out in real time. So that
Yeah.
was much more challenging.
I mean, I think one of the things that Neha said was, for me, another one of the points of, I keep saying this to people, and I don't think people fully understand or appreciate the experience of spending time with him. Like, the words Neha used, where it's not necessarily how much time I get training with him, like physically training with him. Being around him gives me a glimpse into his mind. And so when I am at home training by myself, or I'm teaching you guys and I come across a problem, it's easier for me to engineer a solution having a glimpse into GT's mind. Because like Zarir also at some point said, he said that there is a problem. There are many right answers, but there are also many wrong answers. But the right answers, there is a very specific reason why they are the right answers. And understanding what makes the right answer helps you to find the other right answers, or find the right answer that works for you. And GT spent his entire life in this process, right? So just like sitting with him, talking to him, seeing how he approaches everyday life or whatever, it just gives you more and more glimpses into his brain, which just help you connect dots later on down the line. So Zarir and Neha, you have an advantage that Shweta doesn't, and that is that in most people would view it as an advantage. It depends on how you use it, but is that you guys are physically here with me in Goa, and so a lot of the a lot of the
You guys have an advantage. You got me.
yeah, you go.
I didn't know how to phrase that. I had no idea how to phrase that.
No, I meant that. No, I didn't mean you have me, but you have someone to do the actual touching. I don't know how to put this nicely or frame this in an intelligent way. But all the sensitivity thing, not the emotional sensitivity thing, but the partner drills. There we go. You have me around to help with that stuff, right? Shweta doesn't. Shweta has only like a couple of weeks so that when she actually come and spend time at the school. Otherwise, Shweta is a residential student, so she has to go through a lot of solo training, right? And partner training with, or doing any sort of drill with GT is so insane, because he will change midway and he has no idea that he has changed. You either can follow him or he's going to think you're doing something wrong. And in your head, the pressure of, oh my God, I'm going to do something wrong is really messed up.
You told us to jump in. Can I segue for a second,
Yes.
Shweta, and say that I feel like out of the three of us, I'm saying like you, me, and Z, I was so happy to see that I felt like despite the fact that we have Adi and despite the fact that we do partner training, you seemed to be the one who was most able to interpret what GT was asked. You remember when we were doing reverse Sinavali and I was about to die? Or even when we were doing the hubud with the sticks, and there was just points that GT was looking at me and he was just like, bro. And I was like, oh, shoot. And you just got it like this. And I was like, dude, this chick is training by herself on a computer screen 80% of the time, but she's getting this. That was very cool. I thought that was very cool.
This is a good time to advertise my online classes, guys. It's great.
I have online classes.
But what is that experience training with GT, like your first experience training with GT? Because it's hard.
It was hard, and the first day, I think the first few times, the way GT trains is he does something and then he stops, and then he's like,
Now you
have to do something. And I was like, I've never actually done this much. I haven't had that much partner training, so I would just be frozen and not know what to do now. And I'd try a few things and he'd just, okay, this, okay. The first 10 minutes were just GT giving me these error messages. No, wrong answer. And then I think we switched and I was training with you and you did the same thing. And we had like a very short conversation. He was like, oh, he's asking you to just do this. And I did that. I just repeated that. Like, oh, I've done this before. And then that connection happened. And what I realized when I went back to GT, what I realized was all of the things that he was doing are things that we have done before. At a different time and maybe in a different class, in a different setting. And all of that stems from the basic drills that we've been doing all along. And all the smallest possible elements that you could break a drill down to. It was a combination of all of those pieces. And I feel like I had most of those pieces already going in. So what I started doing after the first half an hour was forget about the sequence of things that he was asking me to do, right? Like not see it as a drill, not see it as a combination, as a preset combination, but basic responses to the basic things that he'd throw at me and just apply that. And the sequence would keep changing. And so many times, I think when each one of us got together, everyone was doing a different thing. Like if I'd move to Z, I'd be like, oh, is that what you're doing? And then I have to adapt to what Z was doing. And when we switched back, and I'm now with Neha, and Neha's doing something completely different. And I was like, okay, is that what he said to you? Okay, cool. Let me try to adapt to that. And when I'd be with you, you'd be like, okay, wait. This is option 1. This is option 2. This is 3. This is 4. This is also something else that you can do with it. So it was like all of those pieces were adding up and making a lot of sense. And it wasn't like we were learning a set pattern. We were learning to solve problems in real time. And that was mind-blowing. It was very mentally exhausting. I don't think it was very physically challenging because all of those patterns are basically based on very normal, common, simple elements. So it wasn't difficult to do them physically, but to process and arrive at what needs to be done was very
Yeah,
mentally hard.
I was told in the beginning, at some point, I can't remember, but in the beginning of my Pekiti journey by Tuhon Kanishk, he was like, in Pekiti, there are no advanced techniques. It is just the basics just come again and again and again and again in more imaginative ways. These aren't his exact words, but I really do believe that and that's essentially what all of our training is based on, whether you're online or you're physically there, is you have a core set of skills and you are just getting to know them like really good friends more and more and more and more, so that they become, so that when you need them, you are able to employ them in more and more imaginative and inventive and there's one more in word over here, um, intricate, intelligent also, intricate, intelligent ways. But essentially, it's an angle 1 is still an angle 1. An angle 1 isn't going to magically turn into something else, right? An angle 2 is still an angle 2. I'm just using the angle 2 as a check now, instead of using it as a slash, but it's still the same motion, right? Footwork is still footwork. You just might be using it in different context. But it was very cool to see you guys are proof of concept for me. Because like I keep saying this, at least to my knowledge, I'm the only Tuhon, or maybe one of the only Tuhons who has trained from recently with GT from 0 to whatever in just Trivi, right? And everybody, you guys would have heard this really often, there's a saying that you can't learn Trivi without dosimetros. You need to know dosimetros to understand Trivi. And that's the prevailing thought, right? For me, I believe it can be and maybe should be done the opposite way. That Trivi builds a really good base for you that later on then you can go and learn dosimetros. And the idea is that, oh no, your students won't be able to learn, they won't be able to keep up, they won't be able to do well. But you guys really, by the end, you really thrived, and GT was really comfortable with you guys. It was I've seen people not be able to handle it in the Philippines. I've seen them do nothing, never come back, learn nothing, just be miserable the whole time. But with you guys, it was great. Yeah.
I just wanted to add, GT has this funny way. He would show you something super elaborate, beautiful, graceful, but at a lightning speed. And then as soon as he was done, which was just a few seconds of showing it, he'd be like, very simple, very simple. And we would just be like, what is going on? There's no way I'm going to be able to, can you please slow it down for me? But he'd just be like, very simple, and now do it. But that's on a slightly humorous note. But in general, like what I think all of you have been talking about with regards to basics and all of that, like showing 1, 2, 3 kind of variations of everything was really interesting, because that's what you guys would Aditya, you and GT would kind of show us, and then that was for our benefit in terms of like learning. But then as soon as you all were done with that, you would just go into like every not every, but like the multiple possible variations of that. And at that time, you weren't really instructing us. You all were just demonstrating. It was just like, you can do this, you can also do this, you can approach it like this. And that was just beautiful to watch, because then there's really no thinking involved. It's just like, this is coming at you. What are you going to do? Sometimes I might do this. Sometimes I might, counter like this. And then you're like, no matter what I learn in a class or in a drill or with a partner, like once I've got my basics down, I should be able to then um, figure out what are the different uh, reactions to anything.
I think you said something really important over there, which I keep trying to tell you guys in Goa, but I'm not as scary as GT, I guess, where I'm like, hey, stop thinking. Just stop thinking,
Yeah.
just do. But GT forces you to do. And I think
Yeah.
there's a combination of seeing the different ways that he does it and him just bullying you into doing. You don't have time to think or feel sorry for yourself or feel angry at somebody else or whatever. You're just doing, and your body is expressing it naturally. And then suddenly, before you know it, you're just doing it, you're doing it. Which I think is very cool.
I wanted to jump in with something, Mr. Roy.
Yes.
I definitely wanted to say, and I don't know if this is, and you would know this, obviously, is one thing I really liked is how GT would bring so much of what we asked him. Again, Z, I feel like you and I did talk about this quite a bit, is how he would bring so much, if we'd ask him questions, I feel like so many of his answers were sort of were based more in life, like how to live your life, like how to conduct yourself as somebody who is representing this art. How there were so many things that he would ask him something and it would be about, you need to be brave and you need to be intelligent. What was it? CBI, courage.
Yeah.
Courage, bravery, intelligence.
And I get it. I get that it's very easy for us. Like I was asking him, like, what's your favorite stripe and what's your and he was like, yeah, sure. He would answer these basic questions. But I feel like given freedom or free reign of conversation, I wonder if it's an evolution as a teacher, a practitioner, or as who he's becoming, where it became so much more about what this meant for the way you conduct yourself as a human, what Kali meant towards that. I don't know if you guys felt that. I really like that. I really like that he would draw it back to that again and again and again.
I mean, now that you're saying it, I am thinking back to, the interview I did with him. I know you've done one as well, where I can see similar answers, and it perplexed me actually. And oftentimes it has frustrated me. I just want a straight answer sometimes. And I think one of the reasons GT doesn't give straight answers is because it's what he calls thought-provoking process, where he wants you to do a lot of the work without trying to look for an easy shortcut from him. But there are sometimes when people are like, yeah, I'm willing to do the work. I am doing the work. But if you could just give me an insight, it might help a little bit.
Adi, you do the same thing, bro.
I do. No, I do. I definitely agree. I mean, because I know how much of that process, as frustrating as it is, I know that process has really benefited. If anybody believes I have some understanding of this art, it's because of that process. And so I definitely believe in that process. But it's definitely been one of my struggles too, because also you have to understand that when I went to train in the Philippines, I didn't have a me. Right? Tuhon Kanishk lived, when I was in Delhi, he lived like 2 hours away one way or 3 hours away one way, and it wasn't feasible for me to go there multiple times a week. I might see him once a month or something. I didn't have a me. So the only way for me to, and when I moved to Goa, even less, right? When the only way for me to train would be, I'm gonna go to the Philippines, I'm gonna figure out what I'm gonna do in the year, and then I'm gonna come back, train. I don't know if this is the right way. I don't know if this is gonna pay dividends. I don't know if this is a waste of time. But when I go back the next year, then I pick up more notes, additions, subtractions, little variations. But going through the process, you're always looking for some sort of direction, because you cannot believe that you're on the right track. At least I, with already my lack of confidence, issues in my imposter complex and all of these kind of things, I already have this thing where I'm like, I must be, this cannot be right. But not, he would do enough to keep me on track through the physical thing, but he would never let me get lazy with the intellectual thing. So anytime physically he would show me I'm on the right track, but anytime I ask him questions, he'd always give me a very frustrating answer. That's been one of my major struggles uh, with GT over here. I don't know, what do you guys really struggle with over there, apart from the trillion variations that he gave you?
But before we get to that, I want to just so I got some time to spend with him alone.
It's okay.
Perfect timing with Luca.
Okay.
So I did get some time alone with him, and I did ask him some question, and he gave me a very uh, obtuse answer, and I was like, "Why don't you just tell me? Like, why don't you just say it?" And he said something interesting. He said, "My answer might not be your answer," and he just stopped at that. And I was like, "Shit, that summarizes everything that we've done for the past 2 weeks," because he doesn't want to give his answer because it will probably not make sense to me. And that is why I think it's been pushing us to go on this journey and find out what is the answer for yourself. So a bit too profound, right after a really, really nasty, dirty joke.
Yeah.
So much wisdom, all of us, and I think I was quiet for the rest of the drive home because I was just thinking about this shit that makes sense. That's what this was about, because his answer is probably not.
Also, I think the thing that people tend to forget, it's not his answer that's important. It's the process that led him to the answers that we are trying to go through. Because that's how we find our own answer. And that's one thing that spending time with him really gives you an insight into that process.
Yeah.
I think I
Because
would.
a lot of his answers were stories
Yeah.
that seemed unrelated a
Yeah.
lot of times. So it was his way of saying, this is how I got there. So he wasn't telling us, okay, this is the answer, but something like, this is how I got to my answer. And that was just like one perspective. And
Yeah.
there has been so much to think about.
Next time Neha gives me a lecture about ranting, this is what I'm going to say. You were going to say something, Neha?
No, I was just gonna say, I think that I might have found it frustrating is not the right word, but I would have found it harder to I don't even know how to phrase it, but I think because I've been with you for the last 2 years and you do teach like this as well. I feel like that was almost like seeing like a macrocosm of like the way you tend to teach. It was really interesting actually to kind of see like where that came from. For me at least, it was like, oh, I see. You know what I mean? Like you connect the dots that way. It's kind of lovely. It's always lovely, I think, to meet your teacher's teacher, because then you kind of start to see your teacher as a student.
Agreed.
And it changes your perspective on your teacher. Seeing you around GT for me was eye-opening, because for me, you have been the epitome of this art. I love how you move. I love your interpretation of it. So many people have told me your martial arts genius, emotionally vacant. But like, you know, so but then to see like the bop, you know what I mean, on top of like, and to see you as a child in front of that person in that
I definitely am.
That was very cool for me. That was just to see the way you were looking at him is kind of the way we look at you, right? Like it was a lovely
I
progression.
always like, it's very interesting that you said this, because I remember then I have trained with Tuhon Ganesh before he was Tuhon. When he was, I trained Shaolin Kung Fu with him for a couple of years, really, really long ago. That's how our association began actually. And I had very similar experience when him and me would train with GT, because GT is his teacher as well. And I hadn't actually thought about that until you just mentioned it, how it would be for you guys to see me with him. But I definitely think it is a really interesting experience, and I quite enjoyed that, just because I don't know, it's just something very like lovely, comforting, homely. But I don't know, I feel quite nice about it. I don't know. What about you, Zarir? Like,
Yeah. No, I think I made this. Sounds silly to say, but when I was making some Instagram posts, I struggle with the captions. Sometimes I often found myself using that exact language. Like I am training with my teacher's teacher, and I actually I kept thinking about that. Very similar sentiment to what echoing what Neha just said. But I think like I might backtrack a little bit, but like you were talking about what's it like to train with GT, and especially going to the Philippines, and what does the day look like and all of that. Um, Honestly, we got 2 to 3 hours with GT in terms of training every day, but we had a lot of time that was not physically training, where he would actually. I mean, I'm kind of a nerd that way. I really enjoy some of the philosophical, the cultural, the tradition, history. I love that kind of stuff. I eat it up, and so there was a lot of that, which I really enjoyed. Um, but this thing about GT is he's not like Kali is not just something he does on the side. Like he basically is Kali. So just as an example of me asking him a question, going back to the thing about asking him a question and not getting a straight answer. Like all of us, some of us here in this group have like knives and enjoy knives and or have a favorite weapon. I like we were just chatting, just him and me alone, and I asked him what I thought was a casual question, like almost like what's your favorite color. But I asked him what's your favorite weapon, and GT didn't give me. He wouldn't tell me. He didn't say stick, knife, sword, nothing. He was like, I don't have a favorite weapon because it depends on like the situation. Like I gotta be ready to do whatever with whatever I have, including improvised weapons. My answer, I mean the answer I wanted was like there's this particular knife or sword that I really like, but GT wouldn't say that. He was just like, uh, no, it all depends on. So he's just like in this warrior mode all the time.
Yeah.
He won't even tell you this is my favorite. Yeah. So that's what I think was really interesting, and this thing about like provoking you to think all the time was,
Yeah.
as Shweta also said, more than the physical aspect, it's mentally it can be mentally exhausting.
Yeah.
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 I
Just
enjoyed watching you get beat up.
you watch like me, you
I
guys.
enjoyed watching you get beat up, bro. And
This,
my favorite was when GT would hit you twice here, and you'd be like, "Yeah, we want. They hit me here twice as well." You know,
yeah, it has to be equal.
has
But
to
this trip was, he was really sweet. This trip, I I did not get beaten up the way I normally get beaten up even once. Like, to be super honest, even at his worst in this trip was better than his best at any other trip in terms of when he demonstrates on us. So, but having said all this, there is one part I do wish you guys had seen. I do wish you guys had seen when he goes hard with us. Because I think, and this is something that again, my opinion on this is going to evolve, I think, as I continue to train and as I continue to learn, I continue to teach. But when I first started this art, it was told to me that, Filipino martial arts are the way of pain. You learn it through pain. And while I may or may not necessarily agree with that or think it's the best way, I do think that there is a lot of value that you can learn from, gain from learning to take pain. But it has to be done correctly. It cannot be done vindictively. It cannot be done uh, boost your own ego or teacher's ego. It has to all be done in a certain way where it will add value to a student. And one of my most important lessons in life was my first time I was in the Philippines with GT, and I was training, and he was hitting us hard that time, and I used to, it was, ooh, it hurts, and he used to get angry with me, why are you making so much sound? And so he started demonstrating on me, and it was a blow to me. So the next time I went back, I was like, I'm not going to make a sound no matter what happens. And when I started approaching it with that attitude, what ended up happening was that I realized that I was reacting to what I thought the pain should feel like, rather than what the pain does feel like. And that changed my training, that changed my life. But even other than that, there is, I through trial and error, I I feel like I have come to a point of surrender which is doable for most people. the issue with nowadays surrender is that when you're going to a teacher, and you see this all the time, martial arts are so prone to cults, you know, and all sorts of things go wrong in that sort of situation. And when you, it's all predicated on this notion of surrender. And the problem is that in order to learn a martial art, there has to be some faith, you have to give up some amount of faith to your teacher, because he obviously or she knows better than when you do, and there is a leap of faith involved. However, when you surrender too much and you start believing almost anything, then you know it's prone to all sorts of nonsense, you know, being thrown your way. And I think through trial and error, I've come to a pretty good balance of critical, I think I call it surrenderable critical thinking, where everything that GT is giving me or teaching me, I actively, as part of my work, seek to find value in that, value that will add to my life. I accept that he is not perfect. He is a human being. I don't put him on a pedestal as a person. He might be on a pedestal as in movement and martial arts, but as a person, he's not on a pedestal. He's an imperfect person, prone to all sorts of things as well. I will surrender to the experience as much as I can. No, I will surrender to the experience, but I will not give over my critical thinking. So if something he says to me doesn't make sense, first what I will do, instead of throwing it out, because that's the other thing, that no, this doesn't make sense, it's useless. I will sit and think and work on the things that he's shown me. And only after a really good amount of work and a really decent broad base of knowledge will I decide whether something makes sense or something doesn't make sense. So I'm not just drinking whatever he's giving me, drinking that Kool-Aid without asking, but I'm also not throwing away things that don't make any sense to me. And I think that the best personification is not the right word, but the best way that's shown is when he demonstrates on me. And I do wish that you guys are going to see that. Maybe hopefully you will one day, but that's something that I wish you had seen. Just to bring it all together to end, I know we all have to go. What are your I have two questions for you guys, and you can string them however you want to. What are your takeaways from, it's still fresh, we've only been back what, like 2 days, 3 days, something like that. What are your takeaways at this point? Because I do believe that as you continue training and as we work on the stuff that we've done, you're going to get a lot more stuff. What are your takeaways at this point from training? The things that really stick out to you, things you're going to remember, training wise, life wise, whatever. And is there anything you wish you had known before you went, or that you would like to tell other people who, like, that you'd like people to know who are also thinking of going on this journey? It doesn't have to be good things. It can also be things you wish you knew, like in a bad sense also. This would have made life easier. Yeah. Whoever wants to go first.
I can go first. I'll talk about the key takeaway. This was something I was thinking on my flight home, and probably not training related. The compound input of GT, you, Neha, Zarir, and Jam when he was around as well, for me was...
Jam is GT's son, for whoever doesn't know.
For me was that there will be infinite ways of solving one problem. The solutions that are accessible to me depend on my level of skill, knowledge, and practice. So there will be things that I feel like I know, or things that I've seen someone else do, and I feel that, okay, I can do this, but if I haven't practiced those things, I will probably not be able to do it, even if I feel like I fully understand.
Experience in there. Experience matters. You can bridge skill, conditioning, a lot of stuff with better experience. But yes.
Yeah. So that for me was the key takeaway. And it was not something that I got from just GT or you or one person. It was basically the combined input of everybody. There were a lot of conversations that we had over dinner, just Neha and Zarir and myself just breaking down what we got
Guys
from the
went for
training.
dinner without me.
Oh yeah, multiple times. That's when we were all asleep.
Mm-hmm.
So that processing, talking about the day and what did we learn, what didn't work. And even when we were training, GT would show us something or you would show us something, and then we would try that on each other. And I felt like I was doing exactly what you guys had shown or what you had told. But when GT would do it, I'd feel it would feel very different. It would feel like, no, my arm is freer and there's more space here and this doesn't feel locked and there's more space to move and all
And
of
then
those
you would do
kind.
it.
When I would do it, I'd feel like, no, this is not what he showed us. Yes, the movements look exactly the same. Yes, we did follow the same sequence of events, but there's something missing here and we don't know what it is. And GT would see my face processing it and realizing that no, this felt right, but there's something missing. He would just come, walk to us, and just show it again. Like it was it was creepy. It was as if he was reading my mind, and he'd be like, "Yeah, this is what is missing," and he'd just show it, and it would make sense. So, um, yeah, that was the key takeaway from everybody together. I think if there was even one factor missing, say if Neha or Zarir were not on the trip, or if I hadn't gone with you and I'd probably just gone with GT, this wouldn't have happened. All of this learning and all of this knowledge that I now have that I can work on by myself would not have happened. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you my key takeaway, and you're gonna laugh, Adi, is guys, when I started training with Adi, all I wanted to do, and he used to call it the shiny thing syndrome. Like I wanted to do the fanciest, most intricate, sort of ridiculous combination of whatever I could do. And I've written about this since I've come back. My biggest takeaway from this is I cannot place enough importance on my basics, because if you really look at what we did this trip, what GT, who could have showed us anything, I don't think it was about anything. Even when he was working with Adi, whatever, it was a lot of basics. Obviously, the interpretation of them and his understanding of the efficacy of them and how to use them in the most intuitive or efficient way, all of that, right? But it was basics. We were doing stashes and we were doing thrusts and we were doing circles and we were doing, and we, and the cleaner you are and the more you've done them and the more sort of it's built into your body. And Adi told me this from day one. Adi used to say just 10 minutes on your angle 1, angle 2 and basic footwork. And I'd be like, whatever. And he'd be like, for 3 years. And I was like, you're a dumb. And and today, looking at how GT moves, looking at the choices GT makes with his strikes, looking at the choices he makes, even when he's just flowing, all the stuff that we got when he just was doing our little photo shoots and he was just moving. It's these beautiful, little, tight, compact, basic moves. That was I cannot tell you how many times I've gone through, how many times I've watched all these things and I've been like, man, it's revolutionary for someone like me. That for me was a huge takeaway.
I mean,
if I can add to that, like if we were to summarize all of our training and say, okay, we're going to do drills, we're going to convert all of this into drills, it's basically just 3 drills. Like
it's 4 drills and I gave them to you already.
4 drills.
But again, I just remembered this. One of the reasons I wanted you guys to, because sort of the way, I mean, you guys are more and more exposed to more and more teachers in the Filipino martial arts, in Pekiti. You have more and more people reaching out to you, saying this way or that way or something or the other.
Speaking to any one of us in particular, or just to all of us?
To all of you.
All right.
The more that but now you've met GT, you've seen the way that he moves, the way that he does things, right? And this is because one thing that's going to happen, and I'm going to be very candidly honest about this, GT is not going to be around forever. I know we love to skirt around this in the Pekiti world, but it's true. And when he's gone, one of the major things that are going to happen is that people are going to start saying this is authentic, this is real, this is not real, this is not authentic, right? Just to be like, this is the real thing. We have the real thing, they don't. This is going to be a big thing that's going to happen. And it's really easy for people to fall for these things because they don't know any better, because they haven't experienced GT, but you have seen everything that he's done. And I just wanted to say, like, Zarir was there when I had this conversation with him about the material that we did. What you guys did actually is literally the tip. It's if there was a hierarchy of basics to advanced, which this proves there isn't, but if there was, you guys did the most advanced stuff in Pekiti. You did part of a system that most of us had only heard stories about from him and never thought that we thought it would be, the story was only ever be saved for the family, right? I've done a little bit of it beforehand. By the way, before anybody freaks out, there's not a ghost in the back opening and closing my door. There's someone coming in and out of my room, so don't freak out. You can't see them behind me before this goes on Ghostbusters or something. So you guys did literally like something that I've done a little bit of before, and it was, you're right, it was just basics. You know, it was just basics done in the most efficient way possible. And wherever, you know, we go from here or whatever happens, just remember this, something that nobody else can take away from you. That whenever, and people will give you reasons why your experience also isn't valid. He's old, he's this, he's that, he's this, but you know, you experienced him, you saw him move, you saw him do whatever, and that's something that nobody can take away. And this is where your critical thinking has to come in. So even when I say things to you, even then you have a reference point. Oh, but this is what I saw with GT. And it might not always be a correct inference, which is why conversation is important. You need to be able to say back to your teacher, ask this question back to your teacher, but you have that reference point of GT, and no one's ever going to top. No one's ever going to top that. There might be different evolutions of it. There might be different iterations of it, different interpretations of it, but you know, GT will be GT. Siri, what about you? Like, what are your takeaways? And
yeah, so I've gone last now, so I think it's gonna be more on. I kind of agree with what these guys have said before me, but I just want to build on this. Like, I think one of the key takeaways, and this might seem a bit off topic, but like, if you're like, when I was a kid, I'd watch a lot of martial arts movies. I didn't have any skill. I just was interested, and you know, lots of Jackie Chan stuff, Bruce Lee stuff, and a lot of other kind of movies. And as kids, you know, you goof around, you try and like literally mimic or copy the moves that you see, and you think that like, if I just keep doing this, maybe I'll get like good at it or something like that. And obviously that's not the case, because that it never works like that. The key takeaway for me was that this, building on this thing about basics, right? Even just doing something, repeating it like 1,000 times isn't going to get you good. Like what I heard, and I've heard you say it, Aditya, I heard GT say it to me a couple of times, is the intent, okay? Is the purpose behind it. Like if you don't know that, if you're just like, if I watched GT in a room and just try to copy what he did, I wouldn't like, anyway, that wouldn't work, because I'm never going to be able to copy what he's doing. And if I just mimic his movements, it's not going to work either. That basic understanding of why he's doing what he's doing, why any one of us is doing what we're doing now, and it kind of sounds counterintuitive because you're not supposed to think about these things when you're actually working on it in class or whatever, but beforehand or after the fact, like I definitely I'm going to think about this. Why did I do what I did? Or is, you know, what is the intent behind this particular thing? Why this angle versus, you know, that angle? If I start doing that more now, I think that's going to like just be hugely beneficial to me, because of course you have your online classes, and I have the privilege of being in your actual class, so it's very cool for me. But like there's YouTube is full of like stuff, right? I can just watch, I can watch stuff and say that I learned this, but if I'm not examining myself, like, and looking at the intent, the purpose behind everything, like the way my footwork is, the way my angles are, then it's useless, it's meaningless. And where some of us are doing it for, like, some of us are doing these things for various reasons, whatever, health, fitness, just we're obsessed with martial arts, whatever it may be. But at the end of the day, like Kali, it's not a sport, it's a combat art. And I hope the day never comes, but if push comes to shove, like if I need to handle myself or protect my family or my loved ones, like I'll be able to do something about it. And it's very early for me in my journey, but like I'm hoping that, like, I know that if I continue with this, it's not going to be one of those things where you just learn something online and you think that you can do it when a situation arises. So yeah, rant over.
Okay. Just anything that you wish you had known beforehand? Anybody?
I think we went through, I mean, we spoke so much before we were going that I felt prepared for it anyway. I don't know if I knew anything else beforehand, it would have made me more prepared or something, I think.
All right. Well,
I think if someone's watching this, even this kind of recap of our trip or whatever, I think then that would be your audience, Aditya. If you're planning to go to Bacolod or train with GT, I think like going with you would be immensely beneficial, because like I think all of us have said it at some point or the other. It would have been a completely different experience. I'm not saying good or bad, but like for at least for me personally, like I wouldn't have been able to really get much out of it or get as much out of it if I hadn't gone with you. I wouldn't have firstly known about it in the first place. But yeah, it just whether it's the revisions, whether it's the interpretation, the translation, the ability to practice outside of GT. I think all of that made this experience much more beneficial and useful. So
I mean, I would say
highly recommend going with you whenever you're going next.
sure, that would be, more, anyone is more than welcome to come with us. But I would say without me also, as long as you are, if you, there are two ways of doing this. Either go with someone who's experienced training with GT. So let's say you have a teacher who is experienced in training with GT, you can go with them. But if you're going alone, which you definitely can do, give yourself a good enough amount of time and a clear enough mind so that you are not fighting against, oh well, my teacher did it this way, or oh, but shouldn't you be a teacher like this, or shouldn't you be teaching me like this or that. Embrace. I made a video about this just the other day. In fact, I call it the truth about training in Bacolod. It's a bit of clickbait there, but it's, if you're going to go with an open mind, go with it to embrace the experience. And even without somebody who like me, you can get a lot of, because again, I've done this, right? You can get a lot out of it. It helps to have someone who's more experienced with GT specifically, because again, I have seen people who trained 10 years show up to the Philippines and struggle because they're not experienced with the way that GT teaches, and they refuse to accept the way the GT teaches because they've come already with, oh, our way in our school is the best, or this is the best, or this is how it should be, etc., etc. So either go with someone who's experienced with GT. Again, I want to say specifically with GT. And number two, if you're not, then go with an empty cup as much as you can. Go there to embrace the experience. Go there for a good enough time where you can spend enough time with him, because the first day is going to be terrible. It's going to be hard. And then slowly, he's going to get used to you. You're going to get used to him. And slowly you're going to adapt to it. And then you're going to start to really enjoy the process.
Alternatively, you could get this package of people if you fly us there for free and put us up for 10 days. We'll happily go with
That's
you.
the way, dude. I
To
promise you will not be
facilitate.
bored for a second. We know the best spots to eat.
too.
We only know one spot to eat. We
And
went
if you're vegetarian, guys, we got you covered because we now know every place you could eat vegetarian food in Bacolod.
Yes.
So
And if you want to go to a good bar, we went to a good bar. Notice I said singular because we only went once. But no, I was just gonna say, like, ending this, that I have been to the Philippines. Well, not been as in I've not taken, but I've been in the Philippines with a bunch of other people many, many, many times. There've been Americans and Kenyans and Canadians and all over, people from all over the world, right? By far, this was my favorite trip. And there were ups, there were downs, there was madness of all kinds. But I'd happily do this again with you guys 1 trillion times than with any other people. And I think that, I mean, I do know you guys made an impression on GT. Yeah, thanks guys. Thanks for
what impression do we make on GT? You can't just slide that in
but
there.
he thinks you're a princess. He thinks Zarir is
You asked for
courageous.
it.
He thinks Zarir is courageous.
I
And
get princess and Z gets courageous.
yeah,
I've been personally invited back by GT to go to
the resort, to the hot springs.
to the mountains, to the resort, and also he just threw it out there. He said to mystical places.
To mystical places.
He didn't tell any of you that. He told me that. So.
Oh yeah.
Not at all.
I was there for this conversation.
Any mystical.
And
Also, oh, go on.
no, say.
No, my turn.
Oh, your turn. He said that, yeah, oh yeah, Shweta, in a few years will be really good.
Okay.
He said
And
that about all of you also, but also he started with Shweta and then he went to everybody else. He was very happy with all of you actually.
and he gave us a nickname.
Sure. This is Shweta in the car with him alone, forced him to give us a nickname. What?
No, I didn't.
What was
I
the
didn't.
nickname?
I swear, I didn't do that. We were just walking up to the training room, and he just turns around and says, the 4 jokers. That's it. No explanation. He just said it and he walked away. And I was like, oh.
But then what about the next bit? Then you said, what did he say?
Yeah, I asked him, what happened? What did you just give us a nickname? And he started laughing.
No, but what did he say?
No, wait, I have a takeaway from this trip. If you want Shweta to tell a story, you have to put a time limit on it. A beginning point and an ending point. Because there have been times I've been sitting there and been like, it's been an hour, guys.
And this entire story was I picked up a pebble. That was the story. Anyway, but there was another line you said. What
yes.
described us as?
He and his explanation to that was that we are unpredictable, too laid back, and funny.
You didn't say too laid back. You said laid back.
Laid back.
No, he said too laid back.
My takeaways that were hilarious but deadly.
I agree with this.
I like that one.
He said that later on. That was when I was like, hold on. What?
That would be a LightHaven, like a school tagline: hilarious but deadly.
Hilarious but deadly.
I have to go, guys. But can we give Adi a round of applause and thank you for taking us?
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, GT. Let's give GT an applause because I feel awkward. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Thank you everybody who's watched till the end. Neha has a bunch of really cool stuff that she's going to put out on her page. It's a Martial Maiden. I'll link it somewhere down below. You can also follow these guys. If they want you to follow them. Yeah, Indie Chronicles. And I don't know, Shweta is a bit like coy about her things, so we won't say anything about that. But I'll link all this Instagram stuff down below. Neha has some really cool interviews / questions that she did with GT, which she'll put out soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. Everything's down below. And yeah, see you guys soon.
If you liked what you saw and you learned from what you saw,
please just subscribe. Please just subscribe to the channel. If you have any questions, anything to add to the discussion, leave that in the comments down below. All of these things really do help out the school and the channel a lot. A huge thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you so much for your support.
Dear
If you'd like to
Lord.
know more about our Patreon page and all the exclusive content we offer over there, check out the link in the description. I'm going to leave down below. Lastly, our online classes are up and running. Our residential program is up and running. So to train with us from wherever you are, email us. Everything is down below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Thank you guys for being here. And see you when we see you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.